In a small orchard in upstate New York grows a tree that, by every rule of botany, should not exist. One trunk, 40 different fruits, peaches, plums, apricots, nectarines, cherries, almonds, all ripening on the same branches month after month, from July through October. There is no laboratory behind this, no genetic engineering, no patented seed, just an ancient technique that America once knew, and then systematically erased from its collective memory. What you're about to discover is not just the story of a remarkable tree. It is the story of how this country lost an estimated 17,000 apple varieties in less than a century, and how a small number of people are winning that knowledge back, one graft at a time. Between 1800 and 1900, the United States was home to an estimated 17,000 named varieties of apples. Every region had trees shaped by its own soil, its own winters, its own rainfall. A farmer in Virginia grew different apples than a farmer in Oregon. Towns held competitions for the finest local varieties. Families passed grafting techniques down across generations, like any other inheritance. Then came standardization, and with it, the greatest quiet erasure in the history of American agriculture. Once you understand how the tree of 40 fruit works, you will never look at a supermarket shelf the same way again. Grafting is not a modern invention. Historical records place the practice in ancient China as far back as 1560 BCE. Ancient Greek medical texts from 424 BCE contain the first direct written reference to it. Rome's Cato the Elder described multiple grafting methods in 160 BCE, centuries before the Roman Empire reached its height. This was a living body of knowledge, passed across civilizations and continents for thousands of years. America inherited it, and America discarded it. Between 1905 and 1950, the USDA systematically declared thousands of heritage varieties obsolete. The reasoning was not nutritional. It was not agricultural. It was economic. The industry needed fruit that could survive a transcontinental truck journey and look photogenic under fluorescent grocery store lighting. The Red Delicious, once the most ubiquitous apple in American supermarkets, was not chosen because it tasted better than what came before. It was chosen because it resisted bruising and photographed well. Agricultural extension services stopped teaching grafting. Heritage orchards were cleared for development. By the latter half of the 20th century, the diversity that had once fed a continent had been reduced to a handful of commercially convenient varieties. According to USDA plant researchers interviewed by Science Friday, only around one-third of those 17,000 apple varieties still exist today. Those varieties did not disappear by accident. The system made a choice, and that choice had consequences still unfolding. Sam Van Aken was not a farmer. He was an associate professor of sculpture at Syracuse University, known for installation art and interdisciplinary work that moved between botany, agriculture, and contemporary art practice. In 2008, while searching for stone fruit specimens to create a multicolored blossom tree as an art project, Van Aken learned that a research orchard at the New York State Agricultural Experiment Station was being closed due to funding cuts. The orchard held over 250 heritage stone fruit varieties, some of them entirely unique, all of them facing permanent loss. Van Aken acquired the 3-acre site using grants from Syracuse University and the Creative Capital Foundation. He had no formal training in horticulture, but he understood that what was stored in those trees, decades of cultivated genetic diversity, could not be recovered once it was gone. For the next several years, he immersed himself in the science and craft of grafting. He studied which varieties were biologically compatible. He tracked bloom timing with meticulous precision. He documented every success and every failure. Grafts withered. Branches rejected one another. Trees failed entirely. But slowly, the method revealed itself. How the tree of 40 fruit actually works. The mechanics are elegant in their simplicity. Van Aken builds each tree on a single rootstock, typically a plum or peach base, that serves as the biological foundation. From that foundation, he grafts branches from up to 40 different heirloom stone fruit varieties. The critical junction is the cambium layer, a thin band of living cells located just beneath the bark of any woody plant. When the cambium of two different trees is aligned with precision and held together, those cells fuse. The two plants become one living organism. But Van Aken does not select his 40 varieties at random. He choreographs them. Each branch is chosen based on when it blooms and when it fruits. Early varieties open in late winter. Late-season plums don't ripen until deep into autumn. The result is a tree that moves through the growing season like a biological calendar. something different arriving every few weeks from the first blossom in March to the last harvest in October. His first complete tree of 40 fruit took approximately 5 years to build. When it finally flowered in spring, the branches broke into overlapping waves of pink, white, and crimson, each variety arriving at a slightly different moment, none of them the same shade. It was, by every account, something that stopped people in their tracks. What this tree actually delivers. A tree of 40 fruit begins bearing fruit within 3 to 5 years of planting and can remain productive for 50 years or more. According to Syracuse University, Van Aken estimates it takes at least 9 years for a tree to reach its full peak, 5 for the grafts to mature, and another 4 for every variety to come fully into fruit. The harvest then runs from July through October, not a single overwhelming week of one variety, but a rolling sequence, each arriving in its own time. The heirloom varieties preserved in these trees carry flavor profiles that modern commercial fruit largely abandoned decades ago. These cultivars were developed over centuries for taste and resilience in specific local climates, not for shelf life or shipping durability. As Van Aken himself noted in an interview with the Philadelphia Inquirer, 100 years ago, fruit was grown for taste. Today, taste and nutritional value rank far down the priority list behind shippability and appearance. There is also an advantage that rarely makes headlines: genetic resilience. Each variety grafted onto the tree carries its own biological defenses, or its own immune relationship with soil, weather, and disease, developed across generations. A single pathogen can devastate a monoculture orchard because every tree in it is genetically identical. There's no diversity to absorb the blow. A tree carrying 40 distinct varieties has 40 different immune profiles working simultaneously. When one branch faces a threat, the other 39 continue producing. This is precisely what industrial agriculture has engineered out of the food supply. A tree that produces diverse harvests for half a century without patented seeds or annual replacements is a direct challenge to a system built around recurring purchase and dependency. What you cannot patent, you do not promote. That is not a conspiracy theory. It is the operating logic that shaped American agriculture through the 20th century, and its consequences are measurable. Modern commercial food production runs on a chain of recurring inputs. Seeds purchased every season, synthetic fertilizers applied every year, pesticides sprayed every cycle. The crops at the center of this system were not selected because they nourished best or tasted best. They were selected because they traveled well and required the most ongoing support from centralized suppliers. The ecological cost of this model is becoming impossible to ignore. Monoculture farming and growing a single crop variety across vast acreages strips soils of microbial diversity, increases erosion, and creates landscapes that offer pollinators almost nothing outside of a brief, narrow bloom window. U.S. beekeepers reported losing 48% of their managed colonies in the 2022 to 2023 season alone, one of the highest loss rates on record, according to the USPIRG Education Fund. That is not an isolated data point. It reflects the cumulative pressure of an agricultural design that treats living ecosystems as production inputs. We have already seen what that pressure produces when it reaches a breaking point. Before the 1960s, the world's banana export trade relied almost entirely on a single variety, the Gros Michel. In the 1950s and into the 1960s, a soil-dwelling fungus called Panama disease, Fusarium oxysporum, swept through plantation after plantation across Central America. Growers had no fallback. The genetic uniformity that made large-scale production efficient made total collapse inevitable. The Gros Michel was effectively wiped from commercial production. The industry pivoted to the Cavendish, the banana most people in the world today have never tasted an alternative to. But since the 1990s, a new strain of the same fungus, known as Tropical Race 4, has been spreading steadily through Cavendish plantations across Asia, Africa, and as of 2019, the Americas. The same logic repeated, the same structural fragility rebuilt from scratch. A tree that preserves 40 distinct genetic lines simultaneously does not just produce more interesting fruit. It operates on an entirely different philosophy, one that treats biological diversity as infrastructure rather than inefficiency. Today, trees of 40 fruit are growing in New York, Virginia, Maine, Indiana, California, and beyond. Museums have commissioned them as living sculptures. Universities use them to teach agricultural practices absent from curricula for decades. Public orchards planted in shared spaces mean that anyone can simply walk up and take something from a branch. The knowledge was never truly destroyed. It was defunded, sidelined, and cleared away. But it survived in the margins, in old orchards on remote land, in research stations about to lose their budgets. Van Aken found it there. He documented it, grafted it onto new trees, and put it back in the ground. Go outside, find a wall, a fence, a corner of your yard. The answer to what we lost is not waiting in a laboratory or a patent filing. It is waiting to be planted.